It's morphin' time!
So I suppose if people actually asked me about what I did here for AnimeBallZ, that Super Sentai life, a lot of what they would be asking would be framed inside the reference or with the reference point of Power Rangers. And I suppose one of the more common questions where people ask me things about what I do would be how Super Sentai and how Power Rangers are actually related. Now, by this point, I've already established what Super Sentai is. About, you know, superheroes fighting super bad guys with their super robots, to summarise a previous episode I did. So I suppose the question I'm asking, or being asked by my imaginary friends who ask me questions, hang on, blue, that's it. I suppose the question we're being asked is what is Power Rangers, if not exactly the same thing. Because it's not exactly the same thing. Power Rangers is what happens when the Americans get their hands on the Super Sentai footage. Starting in 1993 with Kyoto Sentai Zyuranger, the Americans transposed all the glorious Sentai footage into a whitewashed little show called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Initially, it was going to start with, or it was hoped it was going to start with Jetman, the one previous to Zyuranger. But it was determined by American television executives that Jetman was too dark for children, too serious, too fundamentally challenging and disturbing to make a kids show out of. So they didn't make it. They used Zyuranger instead. Which always makes me wonder if they'd actually watched Zyuranger when they made the decision that it wasn't too disturbing for children. But I digress. Started with Zyuranger in 1993 and then followed through to the following year using Zyuranger again. Now you may have figured it out by this point that Super Sentai every year changes themes, changes shows. So following Zyuranger we had Dairanger, and following Dairanger we had Kaku Ranger, and following Kaku Ranger we had O-Ranger, and following O-Ranger we had Car Ranger, and following Car Ranger we had Mega Ranger, and so on and so forth. But for 3 years, for 3 seasons of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers product, this was not the case, to the point where Power Rangers was actually adapted using footage of Zyuranger that previously hitherto had not existed. This footage in the fan community is called Zyu2. It's specifically Zyuranger footage, or footage using the Zyuranger suits, reshot by Toei in Japan for use by the Americans so they could splice together and make season 2 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers after having run out of footage. It's actually a pretty little interesting enterprise because it does things that Zyuranger didn't do. For example, acknowledges the relationship between the Green Ranger Tommy and the Pink Ranger Kimberly, whereas in Zyuranger, the Terra Ranger and the Dragon Ranger probably never really interacted all that much. So it sort of filled in the gaps left. This is Daijujin, the Megazord. How about I'm gonna put in here. Can't see the back of the camera, so I don't know if that's something. But that ran out of footage as well, and the Power Rangers product worked themselves in a strange little corner where they had more to go, more to do, but no more Zyuranger footage. So they started mining Dairanger, which was 1993 Sentai. So in America at this point, or the Western world at this point, we're in 1994. So they started using Dairanger robots with Zoo Ranger suits fighting monsters from U2, splicing all that together to make a mess of a show. But you will recognise the Kiba Ranger as the White Ranger. And then you'll recognise the rest of the Die Ranger as nobody because the suits were never used. And then in the third season, they continued that pattern using a little bit of Die Ranger for the Kiba Ranger, using a little bit of Shu Ranger, and using a little bit of Kaku Ranger, this time using Kaku Ranger Monster and Kaku Ranger robots with Shu Ranger suits. And the end result is they're filming a whole heap of stuff, and Saban, the American company responsible for Power Rangers, did not like how much money they were spending. It was supposed to be a cheap little enterprise, wasn't it? Just using Japanese shows and pulling it apart and putting it back together. They're not supposed to roll camera that much, you know? So they were getting unhappy. So we get to Power Rangers Zeo. For the first time we have a real shake-up. Cast members leave, cast members come in, complete the bad guys leave, new bad guys come in, complete overhaul of the command center. Zordon gives the Power Rangers new suits. You see, I'm using a lot of words that I'm assuming you're going to know without any context, because I'm assuming my audience grew up with Power Rangers. Zordon was the boss, anyway, into context. And these suits were the O-Ranger suits. So we've sort of skipped Die Ranger and Kaku Ranger. We've gone pretty much from Zoo Ranger all the way to O-Ranger. And then following O-Ranger, we go into Power Rangers following Power Rangers Zeo, sorry, we go into Power Rangers Turbo. So now we're using the Car Ranger suits, which was the consequent series after O-Ranger. And then after that, we've done Power Rangers in Space, which uses Mega Ranger, which was the consequent Sentai series after Car Ranger. And so, we now follow a pattern. Every year, new Power Rangers using the Sentai suits from the year previously. And we have a product that we can package and sell to children. And make shoddy toys out of. And fight over. Which is better? Power Rangers or Super Sentai? Doesn't really matter, because essentially they're the same show. What's the difference though? Well, the difference is Japan sells the Super Sentai footage to America, and the Americans take out all the Japanese people, put in a bunch of white people, and call it Power Rangers. And that's the difference.